There is a weirdly specific trope that is unique to the early 2020s K-dramas that I call plot twist, the trans character is not the predator. And yes, this is exactly what it sounds like, so consider this your trigger warning. We will be discussing two Korean shows, Mad for Each Other and The Killer's Shopping List, that both have a subplot about trans or genderqueer characters getting accused of being a predator. This trope makes me feel queasy, which is exactly why we need to talk about it. That said, if you're already tensing up, I'm gonna let you know that in both these K-dramas, the trans character does get a happy end. But before we analyze the structure and the function of that trope, there are two caveats that are important to keep in mind. One, these shows are in Korean, but you and I probably watched them with subtitles in a different language. Korean is not a gendered language in the same way Spanish, Russian, Hindi, and other Indo-European languages are. In Korean, pronouns are omitted most of the time, and verbs do not indicate gender, making most sentences gender-neutral by default. You kind of have to go out of your way to specifically mention someone's gender when speaking Korean, but in a lot of other languages, omitting gender is impossible. So when you watch these shows with a translation, there's probably a lot of misgendering going on that was most likely not there in the original, because other languages have a completely different grammatical structure, so keep that in mind. And two, both of the characters in question are played by cis male actors, at least as far as we know. Should trans characters be played by trans actors? Yes, absolutely, I agree, but the reality is that Korea is just not there yet. The fact that we get positive depictions of wholesome LGBT characters at all is quite progressive for K-dramas. Korean celebrities can't safely come out as gay or trans, so for now, this is what we're working with. As you will see, in a lot of ways, these K-dramas should be viewed as a reflection of the time that they were made in. Mad for Each Other is a 2021 comedy about mental health, which is one of my favorite romance K-dramas of all time. In episode 3, the male lead, who is a temporarily suspended cop by the way, and a group of his neighbors, go patrolling around the neighborhood in the evening. They are checking in on everyone and walking women home after work, because there is a creep lurking around the area exposing himself. The other characters from the neighborhood watch call them to say that they caught the pervert. When the male lead arrives at the scene, we finally meet Samantha, who, understandably, started running away from the overzealous woman, which in turn made her look even more suspicious. The girl from the grocery store, who was the victim in the previous pervert attack, insists that this is not the culprit, who looked completely different. This is the guy they're looking for. Plot twist, the genderqueer character is not the predator. The neighborhood watch keeps insisting that walking alone at night is still sketchy. Samantha has to out herself as one of the neighbors that everyone has only seen dressed as a man before. The women are shocked and weirded out by the reveal. The male lead urges the neighborhood watch to let Samantha go. The women are still unsure and double down on their transphobia. They suggest calling the cops because they think that perverts would go into women's bathrooms dressed like this, or that this would make the real estate prices drop in the area. The male lead defends Samantha and scolds the neighbors because nothing illegal happened. She was just existing while wearing makeup and a dress. In the next episode, we finally get to properly meet Samantha, this time mask presenting. The male lead needs a makeover to catch some drug dealers for a different subplot, so his neighbor helps transform him into Whitney, his new alter ego. During the makeover, the male lead awkwardly tries to ask whether Sangyop/Samantha is gay or trans or a cross-dresser, and the answer is, there is no answer. This character usually refers to herself as Onni and doesn't correct anyone when called Samantha, regardless of the outfit, so I'm going to keep using that name. I actually find the depiction of a queer character who hasn't found the right label, but is also comfortable with different gender expressions, quite refreshing. This K-drama also subverts the makeover trope by giving it to a man. He is an ally and he's confident in his masculinity, which positions him as a green flag to the audience. He then goes on his secret vigilante side quest dressed as a woman, but he is immediately caught by other cops who make fun of him for the outfit. While walking home, still dressed as a woman, he unintentionally scares the female lead, who gets a panic attack, tasers him, and starts screaming, "This is a pervert." In her defense, she does have PTSD and she is scared of everything, but damn, this neighborhood is not safe for experimenting with gender. Comedic music is playing during these scenes, and the male lead wearing a wig and a dress is mostly presented as funny because he's so awkward, but it is treated as serious when Samantha does it. But wait, it's not over yet, because the main characters run into all of the women of the neighborhood watch who, of course, assume that he's the creep they're trying to catch. Once they realize it is just the male lead, they still say stuff like, "Oh, I didn't know you were that kind of person." But women are outraged and clearly still prejudiced and judgy. The only reason they can think of for dressing like this is being a pervert. Later that day, the female lead encounters the real culprit that the male lead finally manages to catch. After that, the neighborhood ladies praise him as a hero and apologize for making a fuss, but the male lead scolds them for ganging up on him like that. He says that he now understands how scared Samantha must have been and tells the woman to go apologize to her instead. In this show, it is the cis man who gets to experience most of the transphobia. The queer character is mostly safe. From then on, Samantha is treated like part of a community by the neighbors. She gets to use her skills for cool stuff that is relevant to the plot, she forms new friendships and possibly even a romance, and generally seems to lead a pretty wholesome life. I think Samantha is a complex and interesting genderqueer character, but the audience is supposed to root for. The prejudiced characters are clearly in the wrong, and the cool characters are portrayed as allies. The Killer's Shopping List is a 2022 dark comedy thriller about a family-owned supermarket. Similar to Mad for Each Other, there's a criminal on the loose who terrorizes women in the area, except this one is a serial killer and the main villain. This is a whodunit story in which the main characters investigate the murders and suspect everyone at some point of the show. The male lead is canonically a stupid genius. He has an eye for details and photographic memory, but he's also not the sharpest tool in the box, so most of the time he comes to the absolutely wrong conclusions, which is where a lot of comedy and conflict in this K-drama comes from. In the first episode, a new employee with a criminal record gets hired. In this show, all of the supermarket employees have nicknames, named after the part of the store they work in. Everyone calls this character Sang-son, which literally means fish in Korean, and I'm going to keep using that name since we don't get a different one. Meanwhile, in the main plot, a young woman is found dead in the neighborhood, and there are several shots of Sang-son looking extra suspicious. The real culprit is obvious in this show pretty early on, but only to the viewers, not to the main characters. To them, a lot of other people also look like possible perpetrators. In episode 3, the male lead starts suspecting that Fish is the murderer and goes on an extremely inappropriate investigation. As the store owner's son, he has no business looking up an employee's address, breaking into their locker, stealing their house key, and then breaking and entering into their apartment. The giant trans flag on the wall reveals that Sang-son is a trans woman. The male lead goes through her stuff with a disgusted look on his face. For him, this is all the proof he needed to know that his colleague is the culprit. He specifically references Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, but I also think he doesn't know what the trans flag looks like. Fish unexpectedly comes home where she does her makeup and changes outfit, which the male lead watches together with his girlfriend, who is a cop on duty by the way. They also follow her after dark, and the male lead is now fully convinced that she must be the serial killer. He tells his mom about his suspicions, to which she says, Sang-son could just be cross-dressing, what's wrong with that? But she quickly loses all her woke ally points by helping her son break into Sang-son's apartment again. The little girl from the neighborhood is missing, and presuming the worst, the male lead rushes to Sang-son's home and barges in to look for the girl. He and his mom end up overpowering Sang-son with a taser and tying her up. Oh no, what are you doing? The main characters are supposed to be allies. They interrogate Sang-son, who is still tied to a chair. To prove her innocence, she is forced to out herself as trans to her boss, even showing her medical records as proof. Sang-son was actually friends with the girl who was murdered. This was her only friend who knew she is trans and was super supportive. That's why she is interested in this case and has the girl's cardigan. Plot twist, the trans character is not the predator. Sang-son very graciously accepts the apology and keeps working at the store after the incident. She assumes that she's going to get fired after transitioning anyway. At a rooftop party, they all bond and she shares her backstory. After coming out to her parents, they shaved her head, sent her to a prayer house, locked her up at home, tried admitting her to a mental hospital, and reported her to the police for taking the delivery bike from their family restaurant, which is where her criminal record comes from. Once Sing-soon is cleared as a suspect, she gets to be a regular member of the group, doing stuff that is relevant to the plot. She also helps to spy on another colleague who acts suspicious because nobody here has learned any lessons about stalking. But hey, at least she gets to do it in a cute outfit. In the final episode, when the gang finally figures out who the serial killer is, Sing-soon even gets to fight the guy. Surprise, the villain is transphobic, to which she says, "I'm not the monster, you are." In a flash forward at the end of the show, we see that she transitioned and is now openly living as a woman and still working at the same store. Clearly, she's accepted and supported by her colleagues and customers. I think the main function of this trope is to teach cis-straight viewers about transphobia. It is a didactic tool aimed not at the trans audience, but at prejudiced viewers who don't know anybody who is queer in real life. This plotline is a direct response to the trans people are predators in disguise assumption that a lot of conservative people have. Transphobic characters are very clearly depicted as being wrong. They have to confront their prejudice, change their views, and apologize. Once they actually get to know trans people, they realize that these are the sweetest and most helpful neighbors and colleagues who enrich the community. In both of these shows, there is also a noticeable generational divide. Young and cool characters, especially women, are from the start depicted as supportive allies who are already educated on LGBT issues. Both of these queer characters are portrayed as having wholesome friendships with supportive cis women. The girls who get it. And all the ignorant transphobic characters tend to be older. These K-dramas have a please teach your boomer parents how to be an ally vibe. The message is clear. Cool people stand up for trans rights and always call out transphobia. I also wanted to point out that in both these shows, the cop characters are portrayed as allies and protectors of the trans community, which I would describe as propaganda. By the way, Mad for Each Other also positions a cop who got suspended because of his anger management issues as a good boyfriend for a woman who experienced domestic violence before, but this is a topic for another time. I have mixed feelings about this trope. On one hand, it is clearly meant to be a lesson about prejudice. I am 100% convinced that both these shows wanted to support the LGBT community and had good intentions. But on the other hand, this trope makes me uncomfortable because it depicts a situation that is very dangerous for gender non-conforming folks in real life as a wholesome lesson about empathy for cis people. Isn't it so cute when your boss and your neighbors think you're a pervert and force you to out yourself? And then you have to be friends with these people. Hey, they said sorry multiple times. Transphobia is solved now. You're welcome. It is notable that in both of these shows, there are no consequences besides embarrassment for the characters who are transphobic at first. All they get is a valuable lesson and a new friend. But if we zoom out from the trans subplot and look at the two K-dramas as a whole, a different picture appears. Both of these shows are explicitly about gender-based violence that women experience. The female lead from Mad for Each Other goes to therapy for PTSD because of domestic violence. This show deals with topics like trauma and falling in love again even though you don't trust men. The Killer's Shopping List also discusses intimate partner violence and stalking and femicide. From older women to little girls, a lot of characters in these shows go through some sort of abuse, and that includes the violence that specifically trans women experience. These K-dramas do not treat cis women any better. Several female characters either get murdered or abused by men. That way, the wholesome happy end for trans characters becomes a subversion of the bury your gays trope. The trans characters in these shows are also shown as complex individuals with full lives who get to do cool stuff and have supportive friends who were never prejudiced in the first place. What this trope is a mirror that shows where the K-drama industry currently is on the topic of trans people. Korea is not yet at the trans actors playing trans main characters in a rom-com stage, but we're definitely in the trans characters need to be depicted with respect stage. The older K-dramas from 2000s and 2010s either completely omitted queer characters, made them into the part of the joke, or depicted them as predators. So the 2020s sympathetic depictions of LGBT characters is a definitive step forward for a conservative country like Korea. I can't wait for the future depictions of trans people in K-dramas as main characters who don't have to go through trauma. Depictions that are so good that the plot twist, the trans character is not a predator trope, can finally fade into obscurity. And I actually think it is already on its way out.